Venom is directed by Ruben Fleischer, and this is Sony's newest attempt at a web-centric cinematic universe, I guess. And this film follows Eddie Brock, who, after he is infected with an alien parasite, he must gain control of his new powers if he is to save the planet from an invasion of symbiote. In 2007, the world was introduced to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, and in that film, there was a young man by the name of Topher Grace who also portrayed Eddie Brock, and as a result of that film, the Venom property has remained in development hell ever since then, and that brings us to today. Now, Sony has expressed that they also want to start their own superhero cinematic universe, but with the exclusion of Spider-Man, seeing how he made his transition into the MCU. And this being their first attempt, it's not looking good, guys. I'll start off with what I liked about this movie. By far and away, the best element of Venom is Tom Hardy. For the most part, I enjoyed his performance. He seems like he knows what this movie is trying to do, and the dynamic that he has with this symbiote is a highlight. And similar to this year's Upgrade, a lot of the comedic moments in this movie are found in the scenes where our protagonist's body starts to do these amazing things without their control. And looking at the hand that Sony was dealt in terms of not being able to include Spider-Man into these films, I think the creative liberties that they take with Venom's origin actually work in the confines of this film. Unfortunately, other than that, I really didn't enjoy any other element of this film. I think Venom is an incredibly blasé and messy first attempt at a cinematic universe. This film seems to be comprised of two different movies. One film is something that is very lighthearted, very upbeat, and has a lot of jokes in it, and is supposed to be a little more fun. The second film is something that takes itself so seriously, and it thinks that it's the coolest thing since sliced bread. And I do think that the latter half of those two choices is what weighs down this movie in the final result. When it's not taking itself so seriously, that is when this movie is at its most enjoyable point. But when it tries to be this dark and badass action film is when it falls flat on its stupid face. And it is near impossible to distinguish the two tones from each other. I genuinely had no idea the tone that they were trying to portray in these scenes. And I wonder why this movie feels so messy. I wonder why it feels like it was written by 4 different people. Oh yeah, that's because it was. And the fact that between these 4 writers, they have written films such as The Amazing Spider-Man 2, The Dark Tower, Gangster Squad, 50 Shades of Grey, and Kangaroo Jack should probably tell you something. And this film just absolutely reeks of way too many cooks in the kitchen, because what you end up with is this film that is inexcusably mediocre. Prime example of that being the main antagonist of this film, who is portrayed by Riz Ahmed. And I like this actor. I think he is terrific in Nightcrawler, but I have no idea what they were attempting to do with this character. I have no clue. I think he's supposed to be intimidating, I guess. And what they do in the third act is just one of the most cliche things that you can have in a comic book film, is have the protagonist fight another antagonist with a similar or equal power set. And not only do they have similar abilities, but they look identical. There's literally one point in this film where they are fighting each other and they are indistinguishable to determine who is who. I was blown away at how just absolutely atrocious this scene looked. And that's another thing, this movie has some really piss poor special effects. Particularly some of the wide shots of Venom in motion, it looks just as bad as the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk film. And this film cost $100 million to make. There is no excuse that this film shouldn't even look at minimum good. And not only does the antagonist of this film not work well at all, but Michelle Williams' character is absolutely useless. She and Tom Hardy have almost no on-screen chemistry together, and I think Michelle Williams is one of the most talented actresses in Hollywood in this film. I have no idea why she was in this movie to begin with. Another element of this film that actually confused me was the rating that it received. When Venom was in production, the filmmakers behind this movie had claimed that they had took inspiration from directors like like John Carpenter and David Cronenberg. And when I heard that, I was like, great. That is exactly what this movie should be, a rated R comic book film with tons of violence and body horror. Even on IMDb, this movie is listed as a horror film, but the final product of this movie is not a horror movie. It's not even close to being a horror film. Not only that, but this film also has a very soft PG-13 rating, so any violence or body horror that you would come to expect with a Venom movie isn't really there, which is insane to me because a massive component of the Venom character is the way in which he goes about helping people is by brutally ravaging the bad guys. And of course, Sony's response to this film having a PG-13 rating is insane. We want this film to do well financially so we can have the opportunity to have this character appear in other comic book films that we have planned down the line. But here's the thing, Sony, if you water down this film or remove important elements from this character, newsflash, people aren't going to want to see more of it in the first place. Also, since when do rated R comic book movies not make money? And here's some food for thought, Sony. Maybe, just maybe, it's a good idea to first make a strong film and then worry about the franchise, because you guys have not only already blown a Spider-Man franchise, but you've also, more recently, completely shit the bed with The Dark Tower as well as Ghostbusters. And also, one of the most perplexing things about this movie is I don't know if Sony isn't allowed to have an entire universe centered around Miles Morales or Spider-Gwen, because Venom can easily fit in either one of those universes. And it's not like those characters can't be the linchpin of their own franchise. They absolutely could be. So even though I'm incredibly excited for Into the Spider-Verse, I just have to wonder as to why this character isn't at the forefront of this Sony Spider-Man universe. Yeah, you might not be able to have Peter Parker be the main character in these films, but guess what? You have a plethora of other Spider-Men to choose from. Long story short, guys, Venom irritated me. It's poorly made, tonally incoherent, horrible to look at, and has one of the worst villains from a comic book film in recent memory, and the only shimmering aspect of quality that this film has is Tom Hardy, who is way too talented, and this film does not deserve him. If you saw Venom and you either said, hey, I really like this movie, I would like to learn more about this Venom character, or you said, hey, I really hated this movie, I would like to see some perhaps better versions of this character, here are some comic book recommendations that I have for you guys to perhaps get you started. You can start by reading The Amazing Spider-Man number 300 as well as 316. After that, you can go ahead and check out the Lethal Protector run, the Planet of the Symbiotes event, as well as Venom, The Enemy Within number 1 through 3. And then after that, check out Donny Cates' current run starting with Venom number 1. So did you guys see Venom? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, you can click on the link down below and subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. And guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.